everybody, it's JJ, Ramblings About Comics and Stuff, back again with another edition of I Will Tell You. And this week I will tell you all about one of the most awesome comic book conventions I ever attended. Yes, it's a look back at the Chicago Comicon of 1986 in Rosemont, Illinois. Now, that's not a con most people would look back and think, hey, it was the best ever. But I will tell you why I believe it was so awesome. Basically, it started with the Hall of Fame guest list that the con had managed to book. Stan Lee was a guest of honor. Julie Schwartz was there. George Perez, Marv Wolfman, Dick Giordano, an up-and-coming writer, Peter David, many others. It was definitely a stellar lineup, and it played a large part, I'm sure, in drawing a lot of people to the show. To this 23-year-old kid, it was an amazing array of talent. I had been to Chicago Comicons before, and they had a lot of incredible talent lined up, but honestly, there was never a lineup like this one. And to a younger collector, there was just other awesomeness. There were just rooms and rooms full of retailers selling countless back issues, and there was programming. There were panels. There was a late night nostalgia TV marathon that included a Twilight Zone marathon, which I was just discovering at the time, and it was absolutely amazing. It was enough of a nostalgia trip where I honestly didn't want to go home and have to return to present day. It wasn't just the content of the show that made it magical, though. It was the vibe. As with any convention where the venue is attached to a hotel, it wasn't uncommon to spot a comics pro, at the hotel. You'd end up sitting next to one having breakfast, or you'd walk past one of them in the lobby. And I remember when I bumped into Jim Starlin in the elevator at that hotel. I thought I was going to pass out. I was at starstruck. But the entire facility was just immersed in everything that I loved about comics. I had never experienced anything that immersive in my then young life, other than at shows like these. But it wasn't just the comics. It was the city. It was Chicago. Chicago was a town I came to quickly fall in love with, in large part because I'm making the annual trek out to Chicago for Comic-Con, which I'd been doing for the past 5 years. It was summertime, a season for a lot of us oldsters, long associated with reading comics with a glass of lemonade on our parents' back porch. And it wasn't just summertime. It was 4th of July. And, I think to a lot of kids, with all the fireworks and barbecues and all that, there's no better holiday other than maybe Christmas. It was just an awesome summertime experience. And I remember on the night of the fireworks downtown, I remember taking the L down to Grant Park and watching from there. And it was an awesome experience to do after a day of buying old comics and meeting comics pros. And the cool part was, the next day, we all got to do it all over again. Being summer, the hotel pool was packed. And I remember a local radio station was actually broadcasting poolside during the show. So it just, there's nothing like being by the pool during the summer, listening to the radio, and there was a radio station broadcasting right there. It just, summer was in full swing, and the most awesome part of it, a comic convention, was taking place inside. So inside or out, there was just so much awesomeness. It seemed like too much to take in, but somehow I did. there was one room that actually overlooked the pool. And in that room was the show's guest of honor, Stan Lee. And he was in there sitting at a table, chatting with fans, signing autographs. I made sure I got in that line so I could meet the man himself for the first time. Stan, like like a lot of us, I credit him with getting me genuinely hooked on comic books. When I got to the front, I was able to thank him for that. And I was even audacious enough to bring my Avengers #1 and #4 for him to sign, which he did. I think I had a Journey and a Mystery 83 in the pile as well, quite a pile. And I still have all of them. And I guess the best part of that experience was the fella behind me in line offered to take my picture with him, which up until that time hadn't even occurred to me. So I was glad he suggested that. And I still have that as well. In fact, I even got Stan to sign it at the same show 3 years later. There was, of course, a Marvel panel that weekend, and Stan Lee was there, and so was Marvel editor-in-chief at the time, Jim Shooter. Archie Goodwin was there. Tom DeFalco was there. But I just had to ask Stan a question. But I couldn't really think of a good one. So I finally just came up with the lazy, tired query of, hey, Stan, what are some of your favorite comics that aren't published by Marvel? And, he graciously answered that and said he didn't read many comics anymore, but he did give a nod to Marv Wolfman and George Perez's Teen Titans. After the question, in fact, I even sheepishly left my seat to walk up front and get a picture of Stan and Jim Shooter, which I guess in retrospect you're not supposed to do, but I did. Come get me. Stepping away from a show like that, it was tough to do, but a boy's got to eat. So, along with pretty much every other fan in attendance, it was off to the only fast food place within walking distance, a McDonald's that was kitty corner from the venue. And it was because it was like the only fast food in the area, in walking distance, it was packed with other attendees. So I remember going there, and there was nowhere to sit. But a group of fans had an extra seat at their table, and they offered to let me sit with them, so I was chatting it up with them. And one of them showed me something really, really cool. He showed me a giveaway that Marvel had at their table. It was actually a promo for the Hawkeye limited series, which was coming up at the time. But the cool part about it was on the back side, it was a replica of an Avengers ID card. And this guy who showed me his, he had actually gotten Archie Goodwin to sign it. And Archie even drew a caricature of himself in the little box where presumably your own photo was supposed to go. So I just thought that was insanely cool. So I made it a point to, as soon as I left lunch, that was my first stop back at the show, was to the Marvel table, where I got to meet Archie Goodwin for the first time. And I came away with my very own personalized, by Archie Goodwin, Avengers ID card. Oh, and Tom DeFalco signed it too. And I still have that as well. I mean, I even got it laminated. I mean, right? What's more worth preserving than an Avengers ID card? So it wasn't just those guys. I made it a point to say hi to as many creators as I could. Howard Chaykin, Marv Wolfman, George Perez were among my favorites, to name a few. All of their autographs and many, many others fill the autograph page on my program. And I was thankful, especially now, to be able to do that, because a lot of these guys just are no longer with us. What was kind of funny was in the program there was like some creative interplay between the between the creators. One of the first individuals who happened to sign my program was DC's Dick Giordano, and he signed it with, a common enough best Dick Giordano, right? The next guy who signed it though was Peter David, and that guy is always funny, always clever, and so beneath Dick Giordano's signature, he signed better than best Peter David. So I tried to keep it going. When I went up to Jim Shooter next, I asked him to sign it and play along, and he wrote bottom of the list, Jim Shooter, and of course then the next guy I came across was Julie Schwartz, and a legend, and I wasn't sure if I should just ask for his autograph or ask him to continue kind of the gag, and he did. He signed it. Julie Schwartz, still super. Yeah, yes, he was. So, all those last four I mentioned, that they've passed on, and that program probably is my most treasured collectible from the show. It's not going anywhere. It's probably going to be buried with me. In fact, one regret that I have is that I didn't take more pictures than I did. But I mean, anyone from that era knows you didn't have smartphones, you didn't even have digital cameras, right? You had your Polaroid or your Pocket 110 Instamatic, and number of pictures you could take were limited by the number of by how much film was still left in your camera. And if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have bought 10 more rolls of film. But I think we all have that regret. One thing that many attendees of that show might remember is how some nefarious pranksters repeatedly set off the fire alarm during the middle of the night. And what I remember about that was the first night it happened. All the guests were leaving their rooms and standing outside, and I found myself in a kind of awkward but thankfully brief encounter with Dick Giordano. And here's me in my sweats and no socks, and there's him in his bathrobe and slippers, and everyone's just kind of standing around. So I turned to him and I said, "Hey, so how's your night?" And he didn't really have a response to that. But right at that moment, the hotel staff gave the all clear for everyone to go back in. So it was probably just as well, because it didn't give him the time to give me any kind of terse response that he may or may not have had. I managed to make a few friends at that show too, but I've in the 40 years since, I've fallen out of touch with them. So, Ken Deemer, if you're out there, I still have your picture with Stan Lee from 40 years ago. So if you see this, or if anyone knows Ken Deemer, who I think is from the Chicago area, let him know and hit me up. I'll get you a copy. I remember even a lot of the comics I bought at the show. What was really hot at the time was the Hobgoblin storyline taking place in Amazing Spider-Man. But I had missed some of the issues leading up to it, so I made it a point to get all of those while I could still afford them, including the Hobgoblin's first appearance. And then Art Adams was kind of starting to take notice with his incredible art on Marvel's Long Shot miniseries. So I made sure I picked up all of those too. And then I had neglected to bring any of my Crisis on Infinite Earths issues with me. So I bought a couple extra copies at the show to get both Marv Wolfman and George Perez to sign. And I still have those as well. So I cannot overstate just the awesome experience that show was. And there have been dozens of cons I've attended in the 4 decades since. Chicago Con gave way to Wizard World Chicago, and then And then C2E2 came along, and I attended at least one of those shows every year up through 2017. San Diego Comicon, I've been going to almost every year since 1994. Motor City Con, a local show for me, same thing. But not many of those hold the same kind of special memory that the 1986 Chicago Comicon did. And it wasn't just because it was an awesome show, it was because it was like a slice of life at the time that I still can vividly recollect through photos and purchases and ramblings like these. So, to that end, I mean, at my age, documenting stuff is important, so I won't ever forget memories like that. To quote Sean Connery's character in The Last Crusade, I write these things down so I don't have to remember. So anyway, that's a look back at an awesome Chicago Comicon from 40 years ago. If you have any of your own memories from that show, chime in here, and or any other shows that you kind of have the same experience with. Be sure to let me know. But anyhow, this is JJ, Ramblings About Comics and Stuff. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate all of you tuning into my channel. We will be back with some more ramblings in short order, and San Diego Comic-Con is in 2 weeks. So everyone, have a great day, have a great summer, and we will see you later. Bye now.